I think everyone was aware that there were some, let's say, discrepancies with how the characters were visually represented between their appearances in Kingsglaive and in Final Fantasy XV. Many put these changes down to the graphical fidelity that was possible between the movie and the game, but also the fact that they wanted to go for a more realistic look. They used models and actors for their likeness to help them achieve this, whereas the game stuck more to the traditional concept art. I believe this is true for a lot of the characters who appeared in both properties, but after reading a new theory, it's clear that there's something else at play that's much more subtle and it's actually pretty cool. With some of the characters, we can see that the changes were only minor between the game and the film. In his Kingsglaive concept art, which was enhanced by the likeness of Edward Saxby, Ardyn has a bit more detail in the facial area, but aside from a few color alterations on his undergarments, the character is almost untouched versus the game. If we look at Ardyn across two properties, both in-game and in pre-rendered cutscenes, you can see that the details are pretty much identical, from the haircut even through to his stubble. The same can also be said for King Regis, who is of course completely redesigned, something which was revealed when we saw the Dawn trailer at Gamescom 2015. There's a small clip of a younger Regis that appears towards the end of the game, but at all other times, his appearance has been modeled on John Campling. Again, like Ardyn, aside from a small few nuances with his eyebrow and beard coloring, the characters are pretty much identical. With Lunafreya, even though she was introduced as a new character for Final Fantasy XV, there have been plenty of changes to her aesthetic. However, these changes, some of which took place within the final year of development, actually served to bring the in-game model closer to the one they used in Kingsglaive, which was based around Sonia Maltseva. You can see that after some changes to the concept, by the end the hairstyle was kept identical and her pupils were made much more defined. Iedolas Aldercapt is also very similar. He perhaps looks a bit more devilish in Final Fantasy XV, but all key features are still the same. Although his comparison is a bit more difficult due to a lack of screen time in Final Fantasy XV. Either way, it makes the case of Ravus therefore all the more interesting. Unlike the other characters, who are pretty similar in a lot of ways, with Ravus, if you ignore his clothing, you could conceivably be looking at two different characters. This is true when looking at the concept art, but also their renders in each property. And according to the theory proposed by a Tumblr user called Demon of Niflheim, it makes perfect sense if you consider the big change that happened between Kingsglaive and when he resurfaces within the main game, his Magitek arm appendage as given to him by Ardyn. Between the two properties, you can see that Ravus' hairstyle and color are different. His face shape is also changed with sharper features and he looks younger. However, I don't feel these points in themselves are that compelling. It could just be that they, for whatever reason, didn't want to try and mirror the in-game Ravus on David Nutley, as they did in Kingsglaive. It's what Demon of Niflheim noticed as the final difference that piqued my interest. His eyes. Going back to the visual changes, his eyes already look quite different. In Final Fantasy XV, they look more spiteful, filled with hate. But if you look closer, you can also see that he has gained heterochromia. In Kingsglaive, his pupils are the same color, a nice shade of blue-gray. In Final Fantasy XV, his pupils are now different colors. One side still has the blue-gray, but his eye on the side of his body that has the Magitek arm has turned purple, which coincidentally matches the rest of his clothing. This is the case in both appearances within the properties themselves, but also the associated concept art, so it is clearly not an accidental thing, or a graphical discrepancy between the two properties. We know that he gains increased power from the Magitek arm, as shown by the small duel with Iedolas, and it clearly would have affected him in other ways too. When he gets consumed and turned into a demon by Ardyn, it's also that side of his body that's affected the most by the change. I don't know about you guys, but I find these small little pieces of information pretty exciting as it alludes to so much more hidden depth within the game. Did any of you guys notice this after watching the film and playing the game? Let us know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe. Also, be sure to head on over to our Patreon at patreon.com/ffunion to find out how you can support our channel and even get your name up at the end of the video like these awesome folks. Thanks for watching, guys. This is Lauren signing out. See you next time.